Hello, friends. Welcome back to Out of Patience. In the world of science, where logic is sacred and chaos is in charge, things fall apart for reasons no one writes down. When ambition collides with bureaucracy, when brilliance hits a budget ceiling, when the system tells you to quit, one guy stays behind to take notes. So when the bench goes sideways, we send in Oliver Bogler. Here is the latest dispatch from Standard Deviation. Take it away, Oliver.
Imagine a scientist, brilliant and dedicated, pouring years into a research project designed to help a vulnerable community. Imagine they secure a major grant, only to have it abruptly cancelled, their work stopped, dead in its tracks. Then imagine a reprieve. The grant is reinstated, so no lasting harm, right? Well, not so fast.
The damage has been done in terms of the intimidation, in terms of discouraging these certain lines of research that are purported to no longer be priorities for taxpayer money. And there's this sort of atmosphere and environment of fear that's really undermining how people feel going forward.
This is the story of Dr. Ethan Moitra, his science, and the real human cost when bureaucracy and politics collide with vital research, and when the fix creates an entirely new set of problems, leaving the scientists scrambling to save their work. I'm Dr. Oliver Bogler, a cancer biologist supporting scientists and telling their stories. In high school, math and science were Ethan's strongest subjects, so he picked engineering for his major, but he didn't fit in. So he explored the other paths and found that psychology matched his curiosity and desire to help people, and that he could combine it with his interest in anthropology.
The way that people experience the world, the way that people even experience mental health, anxiety, depression, all these sorts of things, is influenced by our culture and our backgrounds.
Fast forward, and Ethan is an associate professor of psychology working on mental health in vulnerable populations, a core project funded by a National Institute of Mental Health 3-year R01, specifically aimed at understanding the mental health impact of COVID-19 on the LGBTQ+ community.
Decreases in social support are often associated with worse mental health, such as worse anxiety or even symptoms of depression. And specifically for this grant, we decided to focus on people who identify as LGBTQ+, with the rationale being that these individuals probably had some challenges related to social connections even before the pandemic, and then the pandemic came along and made things even worse.
But really, why focus on this community when COVID affected us all? Part of the reason is that people who identify as LGBTQ+ disproportionately work in service jobs, like restaurants and stores, and these were among the first to disappear when the virus hit. But there was another reason: discrimination, and with it, stigma.
And that stigma can play out in a lot of different ways. Certainly it can be internalized, meaning people themselves feel down on themselves because they identify as gay, or perhaps feel like they're non-binary or transgender identifying.
And often this is reflected in social connections.
Unfortunately, a lot of people in the LGBT group experience rejection from their family. There's a lot of trauma that can occur for this population that undermines connections. And so all these things really come together to make social support and social connections really challenging, potentially, for LGBTQ folks. And that was, again, even before the pandemic.
And the consequences can be severe.
So rates of suicide are much higher in LGBTQ populations than the general population. And even within the broad umbrella of LGBTQ, there's certain subgroups there that are even higher. I've seen numbers as high as 50% of people who identify as transgender, non-binary have had serious suicidal ideation at some point in their life.
This community needed help, and Ethan and his team developed a study to test if a simple, easily delivered intervention could be beneficial. It was an innovative study, recruiting 240 participants, half randomized, to add counseling to their existing treatments.
The counseling that we tested in our study was very brief, just 2 sessions, and our hope was really to see if this very brief counseling would lead to some improvements in mood and anxiety.
The work was progressing well, and they were past the halfway point when suddenly everything changed. Ethan remembers every detail. It was a Saturday, a day when he tries not to read work email, but he needed to check on something. He was sitting at his dining room table, his laptop open, when he found it.
It turned out that I'd been sent an email sometime after 5 o'clock on Friday, February 28th. There was an attachment, and in so many words, it said, "Your study is terminated because this project no longer aligns with the priorities of the American taxpayers. Stop everything immediately."
Ethan recalls how he felt.
Just awestruck and totally shocked by this. And I really didn't know what to think about it at first. And it almost kind of felt surreal, like maybe this is a mistake, maybe this is just some threatening thing. But of course, it was so manipulative, even just in terms of the timing. So it was sent after work hours on a Friday and totally out of the blue without any warning.
He shared the news with his team and with the leadership at his university. And then he had to wait.
And I'll tell you, it was a very long weekend leading up to Monday, just waiting to even kind of figure out if there was anything to do about this.
Ethan has always seen himself as an empathetic mental health care professional who provided services to the LGBTQ+ community, an ally even who worked to understand their needs. But now he felt something new.
This termination, for the first time in all my work with this group, really made me feel like I was part of this group. And it made me feel like I was experiencing this discrimination in a way that I hadn't before.
On Monday, he learned that indeed his federal funding had disappeared. He took stock. The good news was that 180 participants had already finished. But the recruitment goal was not just a made-up number. It was based on careful study design, and stopping short could jeopardize the ability to answer the core question of whether the counseling had worked.
I really was anticipating that those last handful of months would be collecting the final survey data from our participants and then really looking at the things we were interested in, examine if our counseling did have a positive impact on anxiety and depression.
The human impact was immediate and profound. Team members whose livelihoods depended on the grant were forced to find other work. And then there was the agonizing fact that many of the participants were left in limbo. Ethan filed an appeal, which both defended the science and made another important point.
Because in many ways, again, we were so far along in the project to pull the rug out from under us at that point, actually felt like that was actually going to waste taxpayer money because we just had some things to do to wrap up and that would have been it.
As spring turned into summer, everything ground on slowly.
Was a period of sadness, of stress, of worry, of upheaval, of wasted time, wasted paperwork time, administrative time.
A court case was filed in Boston in which Ethan's grant was mentioned. Months passed with no clear answers until shortly after Independence Day.
So good news, but complicated. Ultimately, our grant was reinstated on July 9th, and so roughly 4 months after the termination. My understanding is that we were reinstated because our grant was used as one example in the list of evidence of early terminated or wrongfully terminated grants that was presented to a federal court judge in Boston, who ultimately ruled that these early terminations were unlawful and also discriminatory.
This was good news, but before work could resume, the university had to reverse 4 months of shutdown procedures, lots more paperwork, which ate up the rest of July. Another twist, the reinstatement wasn't done in the spirit of setting up Ethan and his team for a smooth completion of the work.
The other part of this sort of strange saga was that they kept our original end date.
That means they were not getting back the time they had lost. 4 months. 5, if you count July. They couldn't finish everything that needed to be done in 1 month, so they rushed to apply for an extension, which meant even more paperwork. It was eventually granted in mid-September, just a couple of weeks before the government shut down.
And so ultimately, things turned out well, and we heard just last week that our no-cost extension was approved. We'll have the ability to work on this project through the end of August 2026.
A few of the remaining 60 participants could also still be included.
And everybody we contacted was willing. They were supportive and certainly motivated to continue with us and to provide their information.
Talk about government efficiency. After being forced to waste the 7 months of March through September, Ethan and the team finally could get back to the science with enough time for data analysis, publication, and sharing their findings with the world.
I was pleased and I felt really vindicated in some ways. There's a lot of good there. And there's a lot of good because of actions that others have taken. Not myself, really. I don't take credit for what happened in the federal court case back in June.
But there has been lasting change.
We in the research community have started to change the words that we use to be less direct about and essentially to avoid raising red flags about some things that we're interested in.
It is affecting career choices among the junior scientists Ethan mentors.
And so this one person, for example, really hoped to continue working in the LGBTQ research realm. And the initial conversations we had, first of all, were, okay, is this really going to be viable going forward?
People have legitimate fears about getting funded, and if they can't get funded, of getting terminated. Ethan's own job depends on him having grant support. And he makes the point that climbing the academic ladder means establishing expertise in a certain area, say a specific vulnerable population.
This is what helps people get promoted, get good jobs, and certainly helps make the case for getting grants, because part of what we sell in a grant is, hey, I'm a good person to do this work, or my team's qualified to do this because we have this, and this expertise.
The idea that the government can just reach in and eliminate whole fields of research has cast a chill across academia. But there's a whole lot more than career advancement involved.
And so for me as a clinical psychologist, as a therapist, and as a researcher, it's important for me to do things that are helping people in need. And as we've discussed, we know that people who identify as LGBTQ+ have higher mental health needs for a whole host of reasons. And so, of course, it makes sense to work with people in need, just like it makes sense to work with people diagnosed with cancer or high blood pressure or whatever. Like these are where the issues are. We work in the healthcare research realm, and this is what we do.
I would say it doesn't matter whether I personally believe that there are more than two genders, or even any genders at all, or whether some people feel their gender identity doesn't align with their body. What matters is that some people do believe that, and this deeply affects how they experience the world.
And so my message to people I work with is it's important to put our energy towards not just what personally feels meaningful, but also really has the potential to do good in the world.
Dr. Moitra's experience is a stark reminder that in the world of scientific research, even a win can feel like a loss. And it is a vivid snapshot of human resilience, the systematic vulnerabilities, and the ongoing fight to conduct vital research in the face of political and bureaucratic headwinds.
And even if the current funding climate is threatening and seems to be shifting away from these things, we know it can change. There was a lot of grief and upheaval over the last number of months, and some wasted time and some things that kind of undermine us a bit. But we've prevailed for now. And my hope is that if we just, all of us keep at it, we will continue to prevail.
This is Oliver Bogler with Standard Deviation on the Out of Patients Podcast Network.